Good evening. I'm Michael Loomis hanging out here with you in the virtual Chew Digest studio. Glad to have you with us. It is 7:52 p.m. on Sunday, March 8th, and it has been a hot one today. Got out this morning, technically with spring forward, fall back, the time change here in California. I got started pretty much an hour later than usual, and God, it was horrible. Yeah, it was rough. I walked about 4.5 miles, and towards the end, it was a little bit much. There wasn't a whole lot of people out, which is understandable, mainly because I think we as creatures have become uh, or wait, we in today's modern era have become creatures of comfort, and we would rather stay inside with air conditioning, shade, and climate control. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. It's really hard to say. The more I study, the less I really find or feel that I know with all certainty. The more I study, the more I become open to the reality that I've been wrong in the past, I'll be wrong again in the future, and that where I'm at right now is to the best of my knowledge, and I reserve the right to change my mind when better evidence comes along or something I have believed has become falsifiable. And so I think that's just the best way to approach all these different things in life. And, while I was out today walking, I got to listen to some different lectures, and it has become so much more aware to me in recent times with my learning that we really aren't living anymore in the industrial age, but most of us are still living like we do. We are still living in a world where a lot of the functions we find in our daily lives, whether they be self imposed or imposed by an employer, are structured specifically by the dictates of the industrial age. And that industrial age is gone. That we don't have the benefits of it, if you could say there are benefits, but yet we've kept a lot of the pageantry from that. Schools, jobs, and even how we think about success were designed for factories. But the world has shifted to ideas, knowledge, and personal platforms. I mean, even think about the way we have expressed ourselves as media has continued to change from newspaper and print and CD, records, tapes, CDs, to MP3s, to a world where somebody's music library would have been limited by the expense of it. And so somebody, if you wanted to have a library of 50 music CDs, that would have cost you about $1,000. Not too far away from it. Okay, so let's maybe change up to 60 CDs, $1,000. And now, for if you're a student, for as little as like $5 or $6 a month, you virtually have access to all of the music in all of the world for $5-6 a month on Spotify, YouTube. You There's very little music we don't have access to anymore. And even if you didn't want to pay the subscription services for them, you'd still have access to them. So, I mean, that's the future. The future of all things that have always been commodities, things that we've paid a lot for, are going to come down so far in price that cost is going to be little of an issue. And this is how, I mean, imagine, the idea that food, shelter, clothing, and medical care could be broken down into 4 different subscriptions that cost $250 a year each. Add entertainment on top of that, and it's going to cost us as individuals maybe what, $1,500 a year to live. This is just the future, and we are watching it change before us each and every day. Oh, and by the way, the title of this video is Mike's Mental Moonshine. So, if you want to get prepared to get drunk off some of these thoughts, because boy, this is some good information and it's intoxicating. And I think I have an ant on my table. Maybe it's a little gnat or something that flies, because this guy flies, it's got wings. Anyways, I guess that's how you get distracted. But the world has shifted to ideas, knowledge, and personal platforms. And industrial age models, were things like fixed schedules, centralized companies, and productivity that was measured by the amount of hours that someone would work, not necessarily by what their output was. And the reality is that I guess you could say the pinnacle of the Industrial Revolution was probably, my dad would be a really, really good example of one of the greatest benefactors of that experience. His dad, my grandfather, was the first generation to really get to experience that after, World War II. They got to experience the explosion of convenience, being able to buy a house, for pennies compared to what it is now. I mean, even during the early 1950s here in Southern California, you could have bought a brand new house, even while working a minimum wage job full time. You would have still had enough money to pay for all your food, your clothing, everything on a minimum wage job, including a house note. Yes, literally, 1952 minimum wage would have provided you with roughly 200 and a little over 200, probably about $220 a month. And the house payment at that time would have been $39 a month. Wrap your head around that. Really, seriously, wrap your head around that. Less than 1/4 of your income would have covered the cost of a house payment and the insurance. We don't live in a world like that anymore. Literally, to buy a house here in Southern California in the LA market these days, if you were to apply that same rule, that the cost of a house compared to minimum wage today would have to be somewhere between $112 and $120 per hour. okay, which, quite frankly, most doctors don't earn that much. Maybe surgeons and anesthesiologists. And so we're living in a completely different world where, the house values have been inflated well above the minimum wage standard. Modern knowledge economy, where we're at today. Ideas, communication, and systems thinking create value. Individuals can build audiences and intellectual frameworks. And where media was centrally controlled once before, now we have this idea. And this is just kind of, looking at the last 25 years of the internet. It would have started out with bloggers, then podcasting came along, then YouTubers, Instagrammers, TikTok. And with each one of these innovations, the means by which we communicate has had to change. I remember myself from 2009 to about 2013. I was a podcaster. I made a living doing that. I created some 1,500 podcasts, and then came YouTubing and the ability to broadcast on YouTube quickly, easily, and live and at no cost. And so that's why you see people like uh, the people that have the most amount of followers on YouTube really started broadcasting on YouTube in about 2013. Veritasium is a great channel, and I think his first videos were posted on in 2013. I looked today, and so where we're at today is we've gotten to a point where people's attention span, though, however, is has really dropped through the floor and down to the point where you can see people like I was at the gym on Friday or maybe it was not this Friday, but the week before. A guy sitting in the sauna, and he was like on TikTok and just literally just, and he just was killing it, not taking any time to watch what was actually going on. He was just going through the videos one after the other, just doom, boom, 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 not even taking the time to watch. It was like he was looking for something, hoping it would hook him, and then he could have watched. But that was kind of enlightening, eye-opening to me. And so I asked the question, what comes after TikTok? Content has reached the limit of compression where we don't have to really think at all. I mean, or we don't have to have any kind of attention span at all. And so I'm thinking about it, and that the next phase is likely going to be AI augmented creators and, interactive knowledge systems. So we're basically probably going to be wearing something like these right here that have, you know, a heads up display built into the actual lenses that allows us to look around, and it'll focus on each individual little thing that our pupils are focusing on. It'll follow our pupils around, and it'll pick up on that stuff and say, this is that, this is the other, here's information on this. It's going to be an interesting time. But a counter trend will likely also emerge, and that is trusted long form thinkers, where depth becomes rare and valuable. And I imagine there are going to be, there's going to be a niche market where people value actual human conversation. But the question is, how are we going to be able to distinguish between, real human thinkers and content creators and hosts and ones that are not. Because as of right now, you can turn on YouTube, and for the most part, unless you look for very, very specific cues, you're going to have artists on there that you won't be able to tell that they are not AI. Matter of fact, even right now, I think it's in Romania, there's a music artist that is AI that has been actually climbing the charts, supplanting real human music artists. At that point, the only thing humans are going to really be able to do that's any different is tour and perform live. And that's going to come at a premium. One of the other things that, uh, kind of went through my head today is the idea of becoming our own product. It's a concept that I actually saw, gosh, many, many years ago, Donald Trump talking with his oldest son and daughter about the idea of the Trump brand, the idea that that name Trump was a brand that would be marketed, which I think most people can agree that Donald Trump is all about branding and marketing. And I mean, he had the wherewithal to uh, get a patent or a copyright on the term "Make America Great Again," and then begin selling products with that MAGA on it, and he's probably made a lot of money from it. But, instead of objects, we're going to be selling insight, perspective, frameworks for thinking. And, it'll probably be more of a world where, gosh, I don't know. It's so hard to say. I mean, we have hardware, we have the software. At what point there's only going to really come one point where we have what I would call wetware, which is this right up here, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to experience in person, where you can literally shake the person's hand, know that they're human, and that way each individual can execute judgment in a way that automation and software cannot. And I don't know if it ever will be able to. But at least with humans at this point in time, we have the ability to clarify our philosophy. We have the ability to live the ideas that we have and do so in relative safety here, at least in the United States. We're able to tell our story on places here like YouTube, and we can make our thoughts visible not only to the U.S. but also to anywhere in the world. Like literally, I could come back tomorrow and potentially find that 4 or 5 billion people have all sat down and watched this video. Is it going to happen? No, but that potential is a reality in the world we live in, and it didn't cost me a penny. Okay, 17 years ago, it would have cost me a pretty penny, and now it's zero. Goose egg. Mike's Moonshine. And so moving forward, my life is going to become the demonstration. My goal, 120 years. I'm not dying before then. I'm not. Take me down kicking and screaming. I am going to figure out all the things necessary to ensure that my body is going to be able to get to 120 years of age. And I'm working on that. And if you also would like to have a body that looks and feels no more than 34, maybe 44, and can function fully until, say, 124, before you just lay down one night and don't wake up. I mean, skin that's soft, relatively free of things like wrinkles and age spots. How would you accomplish that? What kind of chemistry needs to be put in place? What kind of rules of physics have to be honored before the chemistry can be put in place? Before we ask the questions about biology, anatomy, and physiology. Because if we can get those things all in order and all functioning properly and all obeying the natural laws that make up what we call STEM in our educational institutions, then everything else that's built on top of that, philosophies, ideologies, religious beliefs, and all those things should run without error. And so, the reason I say that is because I really do believe that, a lot of things that we call behavioral disorders, mental disorders, and things of that such nature are things that are probably being affected by one of the lower levels, somewhere below, anatomy and physiology, or below that surface at a foundational level. And if we can fix that, then everything else that's on top should come into order and flow. Um, anyways, man, need to catch my breath here. So, in the future, we're likely going to see less retail outlets. We're going to see a whole lot less junk, if you will, a whole lot less stuff that's sitting around collecting dust that we hold on to because we find value in it. Why? Because we spent our valuable money on it. Why? Because I had to exchange my time in a boring job to earn that money to pay for that thing. So I'm not going to get rid of that thing, even though I haven't touched it in 2 years. Excuse me. Just finished up some dinner, had some rice and beef. Yum. So, we're instead of selling objects, we're going to sell insight, perspective, frameworks for thinking. If we're going to be earning any money at all, which I don't think we're going to be earning currency. I think if anything, we will earn credits for doing things like going to the gym, for doing things like remaining healthy, for doing things like not having to be. I don't want to say. I mean, just imagine living in a world where we are actually compensated for the level of health at which we live at. Yes, there are some of us that are healthier, some of us that have less health impediments than others, but a lot of that has to do with, the behavioral choices and the physical things that we've done for many years to keep ourselves in a state that is what you would call on paper healthier. And so for somebody like me who has had comparatively zero cost of health maintenance and upkeep over the last 10 years, compared to some people that may be in the hundreds of thousands, if not more, of health cost. Well, why not share some of that wealth back with me, since I've taken the time and the effort to keep myself healthier so I don't need those services? And I think that's where a lot of our wealth is going to come from, that covers, our basic needs, and what I would call universal basic equity, UBE. rather than universal basic income or universal basic high income or universal high income, as Elon Musk likes to call it. So, the way we're going to get there is through clarity of philosophy, living the ideas, telling these stories over and over again so people can hear it, because we got to get the information out there. Most people are not going to go looking for these answers. They need to hear it though, nonetheless. That way they can't say, well, why didn't they tell me? Why didn't so and so tell me? Because people aren't getting paid to go out and just tell, Joe the plumber, hey, by the way, you need to be eating 100 oranges a month. Put that in your notepad and keep it. Life and what it looks like on the individual will be the demonstration. The and so that's kind of where I'm at for the day, and I'm at a point right now. I'm kind of at a breaking point. I've got another 5 thoughts lined up that I'd like to share with you guys, but I think I'm going to do that tomorrow because it's Sunday night, and I just want to sit down and kind of enjoy the rest of the evening and watch a little bit more of my new favorite show, For All Mankind, produced by Apple TV or Apple Plus, whatever you call it. Anyways, but kind of to wrap things up, we have moved from the age of the industrial to the age of, I don't want to say AI, but it's the world that Ray Kurzweil told us about in years past. We are living in the age where we don't have scarcity anymore. And yes, there are pockets and places around the world where there is scarcity for whatever reason. And usually that's tied to individuals that are artificially keeping it that way for their own profit and benefit. And even now, I'm pretty well convinced that in a closed environment, say somewhere here like the United States, and this is really a big part of the importance of why it is we need to have, and I almost hate to say this, secure borders, is that if we had the ability here to live in a more utopian state here in the United States, and everybody's universal basic needs are met, and the idea of having to work to cover our basic needs has been neutralized by technology and advancement. Guess what? Everybody, I don't say everybody else, but the majority of people from all over the world are going to be doing everything they can to get inside of the United States so they can say, we want some of that too. And otherwise, until we can get to the point, whether it will or won't ever happen, that the world can, like John Lennon said, live as one, we're going to have to accept the fact that there are going to be national borders. And it really kind of bugs me, because I really would like to see us get out of our way and get to the point where we can all live without having to worry about our basic needs. We really shouldn't. That stress should be gone from our lives. And if that stress was gone from all of our lives, I think we would all be a lot healthier. We would all have the time to ask the questions like, how do I get even healthier than this? And so that's where I'm at today. That's Mike's Mental Moonshine for this Sunday, March the 8th. 2026. I'll be back here again tomorrow. And I've got this next week off. It's spring break. So I'm looking forward to it. And I will wrap up this tomorrow with part 2. And I'll step into this idea of the path of self-actualization, the power of self-documentation, writing one idea 1,000 different ways, the 3 pillars of an autonomous life, the big idea, the big idea, and some closing thoughts. So anyhow, in the meantime, Mike Loomis logging off from the Chew Digest virtual studio. See you again next time.